here? It's getting serious now, laddie. You know you're deep in a pile of supernatural muck when you sense the odor of rotten flesh beneath your feet. The devil's fruit. We'll be treading into the putrid pastures of the macabre, so get on some heavy-duty galoshes for the mind, and let's stomp about without regret. It begins now! Her name, Mona Stiefholz, 17. Mona was a young girl, trapped inside her own desires and her parents' Puritan ways. She was soon to escape and find herself in the real world. Location, Webster City, Iowa. Date, unknown. In the world of a teenager, the body is a cage, and the incessant drive of hormones thrashes at the flesh, which in turn flails within its environment to find fulfillment and cessation to the madness that puberty delivers, strong and sweet. Mona was unable to sate her growing needs. You see, the tragic person of Mona Stiefholz was confined for several years to a hidden chamber in her parents' basement. As Mona matured, she bore witness to a change within herself, as well as her anxious parents. Suddenly, during her 15th year, she was locked below in a windowless cell of a room constructed to be a makeshift priest hole in her basement. Her father and mother would peek in and deliver food or reading material, sometimes music or games, and spend a while chatting with poor Mona. She found this behavior odd. They claimed it was for her best good, and that she must never leave her furtive room until they beckoned her from it. With unreal dread in their eyes, they would plead that she remain satisfied with their provisions they set before her. At first it terrified the young woman, but after a while it seemed draconian and perhaps insane. What could she ever accomplish by being locked away from the world? Mona pondered. Were her friends curious about her? Did school ever inquire to Mona's whereabouts? The captivity gave Mona plenty of time to think, and think she did. Her main and unanswered question was, why am I locked away in this basement? Was she to be part of a sex cult? Or was she part of a sex cult? No sex or sexual intentions were transpiring. Was she in trouble with someone out to kill her? No, Mona had no such dealings before her sequestration. A problem with money, perhaps? No. Were her parents insane suddenly? Possibly, but they didn't seem to be insane or illogical in any way, merely frightened of something and purportedly protecting Mona from something unspeakable. Ultimately, Mona could only conclude that she was being hidden away due to her developing sensuality and outward appearance. At her age, girls blossomed like flowers, and perhaps her parents were afraid she would be too seductive within the depraved and lustful world outside their family. That had to be it! Mona would size herself up in her mirrors every day when alone. She was indeed fresh and beautiful, but until she could compare herself to those outside, she'd never know just how pretty she might actually be. Her proportions were changing. She had ample breasts now, well-toned legs, hair lush, eyes bright, skin smooth and unblemished. Perhaps she was a diva. Some kind of sexual icon waiting to be birthed into the world, and that frightened her parents. Maybe her parents were desirous to keep their baby girl, a baby girl, just a little longer, and preserve her virginity and innocence, Monica believed. It was a sweetly tragic ideal, the teen pondered. Before her flower would wilt, she was determined to get out and mingle with other people. Mona wanted to test the power of her attraction on the opposite sex. Being powerless herself built a strong craving to finally exercise some kind of control over others. She wanted to be free, and yet entrap others the way that she had been insulated. And she wanted to have worth in the eyes of others. To be something wanted and craved. To be coveted. Mona pined for a man. A man. As days moved along, through her 17th year, Mona inwardly whipped up her foaming aspirations until she was ready to burst forth into sunlight once more. The hapless girl would wear a sundress and dance about in her cell every day between parental sojourns, her head swimming in possibilities of life free among the randy and bawdy males of the outside world. She yearned to find happiness in their arms, to deliver unto them happiness, to squeeze the men dry of pent-up emotions and juices until they'd collapse in her lap, exhausted from everything she would do to them, to vex them, to coax them, to frustrate them, and finally to deplete them, only to repeat the motions again in some various way the next day, and the day after, and on and on. Poor Mona. Her heart and body were about to explode, and she was trapped tight in her parents' confining version of reality. She had to escape. She had to taste the fruits of knowledge and become her own person. Mona pledged to herself to escape the bounds of her incarceration now and transcend, to approach and obtain apotheosis. And so she did. Lanky and languid Mona was able to be subtle and swift and outsmart her prudish parents. While they were visiting around noon on that fateful day, Mona walked about behind her folks and slapped some tape on the door's bolt so it wouldn't lock shut when they left. And after a few minutes of staring into their worn and pleading faces, filled with abject horror over the indefinite dangers of the outside world, Mona bid them farewell as they went out to scavenge for provisions, as they said. Tears of joy were flowing down the raven-haired teen's face as she heard them plod up the basement stairs and out through the house. There were many minutes of shuffling and mumbling until her parents departed their edifice, the front door closing with an issuance decisive. Assurance of Mona's freedom arrived. Adorning her best sundress and floppy hat, sweetest shoes, and slight heels to pronounce her leg muscles, and a nice handbag, she twirled and leapt through the door to her hidey-hole, up the stairs, and to the back door of their home. It was awkwardly dark and musty upstairs, Mona thought. The curtains on every window were closed. It smelled like rank, like old and dry newspapers. The furniture was piled unceremoniously about. Her parents' choices in decoration were creepy. Nonetheless, Mona was preoccupied with what would be outside those walls, awaiting her in the mall, the streets, the shops, and meeting places of the world. So outside she did go, without hesitation, to find everything had changed. It was how Mona had remembered. But the sky was a deep green, with speckles of glowing neon emerald stars. There was no sun. All the trees and foliage looked black. It was almost like an inverse world. Was she down in that basement so long that her eyesight was wrecked? Wondered Mona. Ambling along, a reticence in her step, the girl examined the plants. They were like parodies of plants she remembered, but with dark and weird tones to what should have been verdant surfaces. Everything was overgrown. Turning around, she saw her house. It looked aged. unfortunate and forgotten, swamped by weeds and saplings. Mona couldn't see beyond the infestations of foliage to make out neighbors or other structures. She pried open the back fence's gate and walked into a field of tall grass. It was once a parking lot to an optometrist's office, but the office building wasn't there. It was a forest now. There were no signs of other buildings anywhere, no signs of life. No birds, no animals, no sounds of cars or people or anything. There were no power lines, no airplanes above, not even a slice of pavement or tarmac anywhere. All of this left Mona pondering what to do next. Where would she go to find people, she wondered, hand to her chin in contemplation. And what had happened? Was this a post-apocalypse like all the nerdy boys would fume and fantasize about? And where are all the boys, she queried. Where are the men? And immediately her question was answered for once. A broad, muscular man strode from the forestry where the optometrist's office once stood. Tall, immensely shouldered, lean, and built like an Adonis, covered in long hair. The man's primeval face turned to Mona, and its eyes widened with a twinkle. She stepped back in dismay. The man before her was some kind of creature, a 10-foot-tall humanoid resembling a kind of Neanderthal with long arms and short legs, a lack of neck, and completely naked. The twinkle Mona witnessed in the beast's eyes was exactly what she had hoped for. In the eyes of a normal and attractive male, her twinkle diminished into a dullness as her mouth curled down at the edges. It was approaching her, casually, a smile on its lips, and its exposed manhood rising upwards in an uncontrollable display of approval for the female before him. Mona couldn't move, the terror of this moment freezing her. And then a single, simple thought. Maybe I'm a lesbian.
Like and subscribe before I die. And ring the little bell or you will surely go to hell.
Oh, we're telling spooky stories. This is not a spooky story. Oh, there's no way on the couch I can
it
sit.
depends how you look at it. It is kind of spooky.
I guess so.
Wait, that's it? That's the end of the story?
That is a